Okay, so this is going to be the feedback from your prep. Okay, hopefully you'll find this useful. I really want you to try and think about this and apply it. If you can do this, you just can't go wrong really with your essays. As long as you're talking about the right approach, as long as you are accurate and you've got the detail in, the terminology, it's very easy to get the marks for these essays. But students sometimes think, oh my goodness, it's an essay and I can't do essays. And really with psychology, I would say it's not really an essay, it's just a few structured points, that's all. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to do that. All right, so it's entitled How to Get Top Marks in Psychology. Let's go for this, guys. We're going for A's, all right? You can learn the ways to get these A's. So the question you had was a bog standard question: discuss the humanistic approach in psychology and refer to one other approach in your answer. To be honest, even if they're not saying refer to one other approach, they're looking for that skill. If you can make those comparisons accurately and show that you understand what's good and bad about each approach, that's exactly what they want to see in this section, in the approaches section. So I'm going to teach you a basic structure. Basic structure I want you to use is something along the lines of this. Okay, it's what we call the P or the Peel structure. Now there are various variations on this. I'm just going to pause for a minute and see whether you can remember what P stands for. The first E, second E. Sometimes when you get a bit more advanced and with certain topics, when we do the topics next term, you should definitely have another E in here. And we can put an L in, and it's quite good practice to put an L in just to keep you focused on the actual question, because a lot of you didn't actually read the question, didn't do this bit of it, refer to one other approach. And if you didn't do that, you had a maximum of 6 out of 10. Okay, even if you had a fantastic essay. So, as you probably realised here, let's just move this down a little bit. And hopefully down here are my words that I want. So P stands for point. Okay, you definitely got to explain that point. Now, occasionally we'll use evidence. We haven't got quite the same way, but we could put evidence in there. But actually, for us, we would probably put in some evaluation point. And to be honest, this might be the comparison. So it depends on the essay, but the question here is about comparing, and so really we're getting the AO2 at this point. But we could link it back, and therefore it's possible for your comparison to go in there, and that's where your AO2 is, all this sort of stuff. So now I'm going to show you how to do this. Okay, so let's take a point that quite a lot of you made, quite a nice basic point. If I move this down again, and that was that the humanists were seen as the third force in psychology. Okay, remember that point? The thing is, that is not enough to get you an AO1 point. You need to add something to that. We've got a little bit of terminology in here, third force, but we need a lot more really in order to gain that point. So let's see what we needed to put in. Okay, we want to put in that this, explaining that was because they reacted against, and look at the terminology, the determinism of the behaviourists, and we're going to state what that determinism is, which was the environmental determinism, and also psychodynamic, the unconscious determinism, the psychodynamic approach. Boom, nice AO1 point. Okay, we've definitely got at least one AO1 there. Nice, clear terminology, accurate, detailed, great. All right, let's just move these guys down a little bit so we've got a bit more room. And we want to now add in here something that's going to get our AO2, that's linked in with this. Remember, the question is refer to one other approach. What they mean is compare with another approach. Okay, so at this point, often if we're doing topics, we would provide a bit of evidence. We'd say, if we're doing maybe behaviorism, we could demonstrate that we've got examples. So, for example, Watson and Rayner, or Skinner, or Pavlov, or something like that as our evidence. But with the humanists, we're not going to put that in with this particular point. It doesn't matter. we're still going to get the marks, okay? It just depends on what the context is. It depends on what the question is and what information you've got to hand. So I'm going to kind of compare and therefore get my AO2 at this point, all right? So what are we going to say here? We've said they're against the determinism. Okay, so why is that? What is it that humanists believe in that's so against determinism? Well, you guys already know the answer to that, don't you? Hopefully you're saying it to yourselves right now. And that is, I don't know whether I prepared this. Did I prepare this? Oh, yeah. Because humanists believe in free will, all right? And we're free to choose our behaviours. So therefore, we've kind of got our AO2 in there. We could actually go on to do another E. I might move these around a little bit. I'll leave that there. We're not going to use evidence in this one, but I am going to put it down like this. So we've got a different peel, actually. We're going to link that in nicely there. And actually, I'm going to try and get another AO2 in here straight away, instead of building up too many AO1s. And what I'm going to say is, again, you could probably think about this. Let's have a think. I'll just pause it for a minute. What could you say to evaluate? Okay, when you're evaluating, it's useful, really what you need to be doing is thinking about some evaluative point based on what you've already said. So think about the plus and the minus points about humanism. I think maybe something that's relevant there, which hopefully you thought about if you had a look at your list. If you want to just do that now and pause it again, you can do it. But maybe saying that many believe that this makes the humanistic, whoops, spellings here, the humanistic approach, oops, not doing this very well, a much more positive approach than, for example, either the other two mentioned. Okay, as it allows personal responsibility. Okay, so there you have an evaluative point. Okay, so how do we develop this? Well, remember, you're trying to make a cohesive argument. So you're trying to link these. This should all be one paragraph, really. Okay, remember, you cannot access that top band unless you are using punctuation like paragraphs, good punctuation, including paragraphs. And to be honest, think about it in terms of all of this being one key point, you know, one massive point. I know we've got different points within it, but that's one key area we're discussing. So we would now start a new paragraph and do the same thing again, really. But actually, since we've finished with that point, maybe we'll start a new paragraph with something else that's very positive. And we might want to say our point is another key area that shows humanism as a positive approach is that they believe in self-actualization. Okay, so this is our point. And we're going to say, look, we've got humanism positive, we already mentioned that, but we're developing it. It's self-actualization. There's our key term. We're now going to explain that. What do we mean by that? Well, you guys know that we need to make sure we're saying what self-actualization is the innate ability to strive to reach our full potential. Okay, we need to be saying that we're born, innate means we're born with this ability or this striving to reach our full potential. Some of you in your prep didn't get your second mark for that, or some of you didn't even get your first mark for that. Okay, and the idea is that we need to be saying. It's not just reaching your full potential, it's this striving, this innate ability to strive to reach our full potential. Okay, so we could explain what we mean by self-actualization. We're defining it. We now need to go on to do a little bit more work on that. Okay, so maybe adding in the evaluation, the comparison, something like that. Okay, now you think, who have we got? We need to discuss at least one approach. Who do we know that, again, is seen as more negative? We already know Freud is a bit negative. We know that behaviourists are a bit negative in their different ways. But here, which one's going to be the obvious one up for you guys? What do you think? Okay, I would say maybe saying that this compares, look, we've got that signal word for the examiner because they've asked you to compare. This compares with the psychodynamic approach. Oops. And why is that negative? Which sees as all being born with what, guys? What's my answer here? Instead of being born with this really great striving to be the best we can be, psychodynamics says we're born with id. Which is the pleasure principle. Say the destructive, selfish part of our mind. Okay, something like that. Okay, and then we go on. We could, and that would be nice. That's really nice. We've said self-actualization. That's going to get us an AO1. This is going to get us an AO2 because there's nice, clear evaluation. Or I'm saying evaluation in this context. The evaluation comes from comparing. I know that's a bit confusing. Very often there'll be just straightforward criticisms or whatever, but the comparison is also allowing you to access AO2 marks, which what you need. We would then maybe try and fit in another evaluative point about the humanistic approach. Okay, perhaps, you know, referring to, look at your sheet, look at some other positives and minuses, okay, about the humanistic approach. So, you know, it may be because we started with self-actualization, we want to evaluate that a little bit. We say, however, okay, so let's just do maybe we'll bring in here a further point, another E point, and we'll say something along the lines of, however, concept of self-actualization is a vague concept and has been criticised. So again, we're flagging up to the examiner these keywords: criticised for being unmeasurable. How do we know we have reached? Let's put self-actualization like, whoops, like that. Because surely there is always more we can achieve in our lives. Okay? So that gives you hopefully a bit of an idea about the structure that I want you to use. Now what you're going to do is you're going to use this on some examples that I'll show you. Okay, so have a go at that, see how you get on.